All right, thanks for joining us this afternoon. My name is Liz Schaller. I'm the director of the NIMAC and joined here today by Alexa Miller, our NIMAC librarian. This is our annual training for NIMAC state coordinators. We're going to walk you through basics about the NIMAC and your account, some quick updates, and then we'll do a little demo and show you how to work in the system. This meeting is being recorded and it is going to be posted on our website along with the slide deck. So you will have those to look back at. We'll pause several times for questions, and then we'll also take questions at the end as well. And before we get started, Alexa's going to put a link to our exit survey in the chat. If you could just take a minute to complete that after our training today, that would be great. It helps us tailor our trainings to better meet your needs, and we really appreciate the feedback. Okay, so like I mentioned, today's webinar, we're going to have two parts. So the first part, we're going to walk through a PowerPoint slide. We're going to go over kind of some basics of the NIMAC, some key terms that you should be familiar with. We'll talk about what it means to be eligible for materials produced from NIMAS files. We'll tell you a little bit about the case study we completed in 2025 and then go through what the different NIMAC account types are and how to work in the system. Then we're going to switch gears and go over to a live demo, and I'm going to show you some of the things that we walk through in the slides about adding and removing authorized users and how to search in the NIMAC system as well. We have three learning objectives for today's training. Our first objective is that you will learn what it means, if you don't already know, for states to coordinate with the NIMAC. The second is to understand those requirements for NIMAS eligibility. And then the third is to learn how to add and remove authorized users, which again, I will demonstrate for you. All right, so let's get into some kind of basic terminology, things to know about the NIMAC. So the NIMAC, or National Instructional Materials Access Center, was created by IDEA 2004, and we serve as the national source file repository for K through 12 textbooks and instructional materials. We make NIMAS files. NIMAS stands for National Instructional Materials Accessibility Standard. So S is for the file format or standard. C is for the center. We make those files available for use in producing accessible formats for K through 12 instructional materials. To date, we have received over 90,000 file sets from over 200 educational publishers, and all 50 states, as well as the eligible territories and the Department of Defense, all work with the NIMAC. So what does it mean to coordinate with the NIMAC? Under IDEA 2004, working with the NIMAC is optional for states. However, all states and eligible territories, as I mentioned, have opted into the NIMAC and have continuously coordinated for over 15 years. States that coordinate agree to, one, require NIMAS files from publishers in their textbook procurement contracts. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. And then abide by the eligibility requirements of IDEA and copyright law in the use of NIMAS files and distribution of materials produced from those files. So how does NIMAC work with school districts? LEAs do not submit a coordination agreement to the NIMAC in the same way that an SEA coordinates with the NIMAC. Instead, IDEA does require that they indicate in their IDEA assurances to their SEA whether they choose to coordinate each year. To provide students access to a wealth of NIMAS-sourced accessible materials, we strongly encourage that all districts opt in. IDEA does require that LEAs that opt in meet the same legal obligations as SEAs with regard to NIMAS eligibility and textbook procurement. Okay, so what does the term state coordinator mean? What is your role with the NIMAC? Each state that coordinates with the NIMAC designates a state coordinator, and that individual has two key responsibilities. The first is to opt into the NIMAC on behalf of that state or territory by signing the NIMAC coordination agreement. And then the second is to manage by adding and removing NIMAC authorized users for that state. As we'll discuss a little later, the state coordinator also has a role in helping ensure that the SCA complies with that IDEA requirement related to instructional materials procurement. I will point out that the NIMAC does not require a new coordination agreement to be submitted annually. So that agreement that you signed and submitted when you first started as the NIMAC state coordinator, that's the only time that you need to submit that agreement to us. And then we'll require a new agreement anytime a new person takes over that state coordinator role. Okay, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to Alexa.
All right. Thank you, Liz, and thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. We are going to talk a little bit about key definitions for the NIMAC. So the first one we're going to look at is NIMAS, and as Liz mentioned earlier, NIMAS stands for the National Instructional Materials Accessibility Standard, and like the NIMAC, it was created by IDEA 2004. NIMAS is based on the DAISY file format, and its sole purpose is to support the production of accessible formats like your Braille, large print, DAISY, all those types of things. The format does require further conversion before students can use it. We do not recommend that NIMAS be distributed directly to students. And so a little bit more about NIMAS. It is the only format that the NIMAC is permitted to accept. We cannot accept full PDFs of books. We can't accept EPUBs. It's only NIMAS. And another note on NIMAS is that it's not generated automatically as part of the print or digital book production. It has to be produced separately after the book has been finalized. That's important to note. And its production can take many weeks, sometimes more than 6 to 8. And our publishers generally outsource the production of NIMAS to conversion vendors who specialize in producing NIMAS. The types of materials we receive are those that are published primarily for use in K through 12. So that means your textbooks, your workbooks, supplementary readers, and sometimes ancillary materials such as Blackline Masters. Generally exempt from the NIMAC are titles that are pre-2006 because that predates IDEA 2004, trade books, college textbooks, and reference books. We can accept NIMAS for some digital instructional materials, but not every digital instructional material is a good fit for NIMAS. What would be a good fit is your primarily static materials. So a highly interactive game, for example, would not be a good candidate for NIMAS. And a little bit more on those digital materials. In May of 2020, the Department of Education published a notice of interpretation permitting us to accept NIMAS for digital instructional materials. That did not change the NIMAS specification. And there's a little bit more info in this link that I'm going to drop in the chat. You can check that out if you have any questions. So how do we get NIMAS files? So again, under IDEA 2004, there was no blanket requirement for publishers to submit files to the NIMAC. That means the only mechanism to require NIMAS from the publisher is those book adoption contracts or purchase agreements, including NIMAS language in all state educational. Well, my brain just stopped. So including NIMAS language in all SEA and LEA contracts is essential to ensuring that the NIMAC will receive the files students need. And then I think Liz mentioned earlier, but requiring NIMAS from publishers is a legal obligation when you coordinate with the NIMAC. So all states and all districts that coordinate with us are obligated under IDEA to require publishers to submit files to us. This is a requirement under that legislation, and it is not optional. Here is some sample contract language from Academy. And we will have a link to this in the chat, and there's a little bit You will note that submit on or before in that second line there has a month, day, year in the brackets. If you do include this language in your contracts, do make sure to change that month, day, year to whenever you need these files by. Don't just um, leave it as it is in that template format. A curriculum created or published by a state. So something new we've started seeing, particularly from Texas and Louisiana, are curriculums that their state education um, organizations have created and published themselves. So we can accept NIMAS for these. You're welcome to establish publisher accounts with us and submit files. There is absolutely no issue at all with that. If you have any questions or would like more information, you can reach out to us and we can help you out with that. Oh, and so NIMAC watch list, that's kind of my purview. So the NIMAC watch list is a service we provide where our authorized users and accessible media producers can submit ISBNs to us. And then we will then research those ISBNs and determine if they are within scope for the NIMAC. If so, we will reach out to the publishers and see about getting NIMAS for those. If they are not within scope, we will research other accessibility alternatives and provide that information to the user. And so watch list versus contracts. While we are more than happy to provide the watch list service, it's very important. It is not a replacement for contract language. As I mentioned earlier, it can take up to 6 to 8 weeks and sometimes even longer for NIMAS to be produced upon request. Um, and also, we don't have the authority to require any publisher to submit files. We do rely on our publisher relationships to obtain NIMAS when contract language was not put in the contract. So we will talk about NIMAS eligibility. I think we'll hand that over to Liz, and I'll check the chat for questions.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions? You're more than welcome to unmute and ask your question out loud if you'd like to. I know that was
And
a lot of good information.
it was a lot of information. I am not seeing anything in the chat, so whenever you're ready.
Great. Okay. Well, we'll keep on keeping on then. So let's talk a little bit about eligibility for NIMAS source materials. The eligibility requirements for NIMAS are established in IDEA 2004, and there are two main requirements for NIMAS eligibility. The first is that the student must have an IEP, an individualized education program, and the second is that the student must have a qualifying disability per the eligibility guidelines of the National Library Service, or NLS. Those NLS guidelines were updated in 2021 to better align them with some changes to U.S. copyright law made by the Marrakesh Treaty. So if you have any questions or are interested in seeing those new regulations, they can be found at the link that Alexa will put in the chat. The main, most important thing to know is that the guidelines changed for the competent authority or individual who is required to certify a reading disability. Prior to this change, it was a medical doctor who was required to make that certification, but that's not the case anymore. So as you can see here, I have on the screen a list of who qualifies as a competent authority in this expanded definition. And that can include teachers, it can include social workers, librarians, lots of staff in a school, much beyond just a medical doctor. So that's really important to know. And with that, I'll talk a little bit about our NIMAC case study. I think there may be a few folks here who actually participated in the case study, so we really appreciate it if you did. In 2025, we worked with our external evaluator, True North Evaluation, to look at timely delivery of accessible formats. It is the NIMAC's overarching goal to support timely delivery. However, we are pretty far removed from the students that actually utilize the Braille and large print that are produced from NIMAS files in the classroom. So we wanted to take a deep dive and work with some states to see if we could could learn more about timely delivery and what that looks like there. So we focus primarily on three states, Ohio, Oregon, and Utah. And then we also conducted a few surveys and focus groups that targeted a wider national audience as well. And we sought to address two key questions. The first was that looking at the positive benefits to timely delivery of newly created accessible instructional materials when a NIMAS file for the material is already available in the NIMAC system. So again, looking at those positive benefits to timely delivery for newly created materials. And then second, looking at what practices, including procurement contracts, facilitate the timely delivery of accessible instructional materials. So those were our two focuses. Our full case study report is now available on our website. Alexa's going to put that link in the chat. You are more than welcome to take a look at it. Please share it with your colleagues. It is a dense and lengthy report, I will say. It's over 100 pages long. So we are planning to develop a condensed version of that report with some key takeaways, and we will share that out with you as well. There is an executive summary at the beginning of the report, as well as a section with recommendations at the end, and a very easily navigable TOC. So you can definitely take a look at just the sections that you're interested in, but we will also put together that condensed report and share it with you. We are already incorporating some of the feedback and recommendations from the case study into our current and future technical assistance efforts, but we're really interested to hear from you, both with any questions you might have about the case study, as well as any suggestions you might have for implementing some of the recommendations in the case study. With that, I'll hand it back over to Alexa. She's going to talk a little bit about the different NIMAC account types and some system basics, and then we'll switch gears and I'll demo some of those things that she talks about.
Great. Thanks, Liz. All right, so we're going to talk about some NIMAC account types. So the first one we're going to talk about is an authorized user. So what is an authorized user? An authorized user is someone who has been designated by their state coordinator, so that's you guys, to have full access to the NIMAC repository. They can search and download files or also assign files to registered accessible media producers, or our AMPs. These people are generally involved in some way in the production of accessible formats for students with print disabilities in their state. They can work directly in accessible media production, or they may just manage work done by others. Again, they are usually from within the state educational structure, so those IRCs or state schools for the blind. Bookshare and APH as authorized entities under Chafee can also be designated as authorized users. Most of our states have 5 or fewer authorized users. Our system vendor, Overdrive, supplies 5 authorized user slots per state, not including the hybrid state coordinators. So for those of you who are hybrid state coordinators, you are not taking up one of those slots. And we can also add more users for your state if needed. And so you heard me say accessible media producer, or AMP, so you might be wondering what that is. An authorized user can work as an accessible media producer, but for the purposes of the NIMAC, an accessible media producer, or AMP, is an organization or individual that has an AMP account with us. These are a more restricted account that allows the user to only download those files that have been assigned to them by an authorized user. These users do not have to be designated by state coordinators, and it's important to note that we do not vet our accessible media producers. Having a registration is not an endorsement from us. And then one more thing on AMPs, they can be either for-profit or nonprofit, and they can work with any state. Sometimes they work with multiple states. I know APH does that, and I think Bookshare does as well. And so hybrid state coordinators, that's some of you. State coordinators may be directly involved in the state's accessible media production workflow, or they may not. Your basic state coordinator account has one primary function, and that's adding or deleting authorized users for the state. For state coordinators who would like to also be authorized users, we can offer a single sign-on to access the features for both accounts. And so to become a hybrid state coordinator to upgrade that account. You will download the limitation of use agreement, and I will drop that here in the chat in a second. You will then print out that document. Please be sure to initial each page. We've gotten a couple where, people just initial the parts they fill in. We do need each page initialed. And make sure you fill out that 13.0 section for us. And then you can just email a scan of the complete document back to us at nimac@aph.org. And kind of recently, we are also able to accept authenticated digital signatures, so your DocuSign kind of thing. And then that hybrid account activation, we can make that change for you in the system and let you know when that's done. The next time you log in, you will see both the state coordinator and authorized user system functions. And again, that hybrid account is a bonus authorized user, and it does not take up one of the designated 5 authorized user slots available to your state. If you're interested in becoming a hybrid state coordinator, you're more than welcome to join us next week at our training for authorized users and hybrid state coordinators. That is Tuesday, April 28th at 2 p.m. Eastern. And you can just let us know. Feel free to shoot us an email at nimac@aph.org. So now we're going to talk a little bit about adding and removing authorized users. Liz is going to show you how to do that in the demo, but we're just going to walk through it really quickly. So an authorized user account status. When you log into your state's account, all current authorized user accounts will appear under one of 3 tabs in the system. Each tab represents an account status, and those account statuses are new, pending, and active. So adding new authorized users, the process for adding a user is really, really easy. All you need is the name, email address, and organization name for a new user. Once you've put that into the system and saved it, your role is done. The rest of the process is handled by the new authorized user and someone on our team. Once you have saved that new authorized user information, the system will immediately email the new authorized user a registration link. Your account will then show a status of new for that new user. At this point, the authorized user will complete the registration process in our system using the link they were emailed. That registration link does expire after 10 days. If they haven't completed the registration within that time frame, you can resend the link by clicking the little resend button next to the user's name. We do try to keep an eye on this, but sometimes it slips, and but you can resend it yourself. When the user completes the online registration, the account will then show as pending in your account. And the limitation of use agreement, we just talked about that a little bit. The automated registration email that the authorized user receives includes as an attachment the NIMAC limitation of use agreement. And so just like you would fill out for the hybrid state coordinator account, the new authorized user will do that as well. They have to print out the document, initial each page, and fill out that authorized user section, that 13.0, and then also sign it and then either mail it or email it back to us. Again, we accept digital signatures for those. And then account activation. Once that online registration is completed and the user has emailed us their completed LUA, we can activate their account, which will then show a status of active in your account. You'll also receive an automated email notification from the system when a new account is activated by us. When the account is activated, the system will send the user their login ID and a password in 2 separate emails. And so just a note on the system-generated emails we've been talking about, they come from noreply-nimac@overdrive.com. And they might get filtered, so you might, it's probably better to just go ahead and add this to your whitelist or however your system accepts these things. And then just as a reminder, hybrid state coordinators do not receive a second set of login credentials. You will use your state coordinator login credentials for both accounts. And so removing authorized users. So removing authorized users is really important because one method of digital rights management that we use is the fingerprinting and watermarking of files when people download them. This fingerprinting and watermarking has each file, it adds to it a code that indicates who downloaded the file and when. This code is tied to the individual account holder. And for this reason, we ask that users not share their credentials with others. Authorized user accounts are not transferable. When someone leaves their role as an authorized user, we do request that state coordinators delete that account from the system and create a new account for the new person. And you are also welcome to designate more than one authorized user at the same agency. There's not a problem with that at all. When you go to delete an authorized user account, any account in any status can be removed by clicking the little red delete button to the right of the account in the system. And I think Liz is going to show us that here in the demo. This change is effective immediately, so you don't have to worry about it lingering for a number of days. Users that have been deleted no longer appear in your state coordinator account, but you can still access the information on those items they downloaded in your state coordinator reports. And reviewing your users. We do recommend that you folks review your users once a year. Um, but we do also audit active accounts every now and then just to make sure that email addresses are still valid. Um, and then again, just a reminder, when authorized users leave their role, the state coordinator should remove that account from the system as soon as possible. And so here we have a screenshot of our home page. You can see the login button here and the search the NIMAC. And the new little hamburger menu, I think Liz is going to tell us about. We recently redesigned our website, and so that's new and exciting. And I think we will pause here and check the chat, see if there's any questions before we move to the demo.
Yeah, let's see if there are any questions before we switch gears here. I know that was a lot of information, but like Alexa said, I'll show you everything in the system, everything that she kind of walked you through verbally, I will demonstrate for you so that you feel confident with how to do your role when the time comes. Okay. You seeing any questions in the chat?
I am not.
All right, then we will jump right into our demo. Let me share my screen again here. Okay, so like we were just looking at a moment ago, this is the NIMAC informational website landing page, nimac.us. You will see at the top of your screen two buttons, the login button that will take you to the landing page for your actual state coordinator account, and then a search the NIMAC button that takes you straight to searching the repository. So the NIMAC repository is publicly available to search for anyone. You don't have to be logged into an account to search the NIMAC. And then I also wanted to show you quickly our menu for the NIMAC because we also have an ability to search our informational website now as well. So when you open that little menu at the top right corner, it'll pop open on the side here on the left-hand side of your screen. And the first thing at the very top will be a search field. So you can look for that if you're looking for something specific. We have our state coordinator content kind of organized into a few different pages here. Frequently asked questions page, your first top level page for state coordinators, that's where this training will be archived. So when you go to look for it on our website, you will find it there, as well as additional resources for state coordinators that we'll make available to you. With that, let's go ahead and log in and get started. So this is what the Overdrive landing page looks like for logging into your account. One thing I do want to note is that your NIMAC username is not your email address. This is a common mistake. Usually when you log into a website, you use your email address, but not for the NIMAC. Instead, you'll have a unique username that ends in .state.admin for your NIMAC username. And if you ever misplace your credentials, just reach out to us and we will get those to you and we can reset your password for you. So we'll go ahead and log in here. And this is what you'll see if you have just your standard state coordinator account as your landing page. It's your authorized user registrations. And as Alexa noted, your authorized users are going to be sorted into three categories. New for users that you just added, pending for users who have completed their online registration but have not yet submitted their limitation of use agreement. So they're in that pending status until we receive that agreement. And then once we receive their completed agreement, we'll activate their account and they'll show up here in your active tab. So we'll go ahead and walk through what it looks like to add a new authorized user. It is very easy. You're just going to select this Add a New Authorized User button. And all you need to know is the organization name that the person represents. Authorized users typically are coming from an SEA or a state level organization of some kind, but it is perfectly fine to have an authorized user at a district, and many states do have authorized users at large districts. So that is totally fine as well. And then we'll go ahead and fill in first and last name and email address here, and then you just hit create. And you'll see there's hardly any delay at all. You'll get a pop-up that says the organization was created successfully. And that is what triggers that email with the online registration link as well as the limitation of use agreement link to be sent to the new authorized user. Now, I will say there's no way for you to edit the information that you just put in on this screen. So if you happened to make a typo, particularly in the email address, that's really the one that causes the most problems because obviously the person wouldn't receive the link that they need. You can just delete what you input and start over and just add the information again. This column here also shows that date that the email link, the online registration link will expire. There is that 10-day window for folks to complete their online registration before the link expires. So if you see that we've gone past that date and your new user is still in this on this page, the new page, you can go ahead and hit this button here to resend that registration email to that person. And like Alexa mentioned, we do monitor that on our side too. As administrators, we can see which authorized users are in that new status or in that pending status or are active users. And we do resend those registration links periodically as well. At the bottom of the screen here, you'll see you currently have one authorized user. Your maximum authorized user limit is 5. Again, that is just the default in the system. It is not a problem at all to add additional authorized user accounts for your state. All you'll have to do is send us an email and we'll request that Overdrive add those additional slots for you, but that is absolutely no problem at all. We are more than happy to do that. And again, once the person who received the email link completes that online registration, then they will show up here in your pending authorized users. And then once they submit their limitation of use agreement, they will show up as active authorized users. The next thing I want to show you in the system is your account information. If you go to the top of your screen, you'll see a menu that says user information, my account. And if you go there, you'll see your name and contact information. And then you'll also see your organization's information, the SEA that you are representing as the state coordinator. You do not have the ability to edit your own account information in the system. Instead, if you do need something updated, particularly your contact information, just reach out to us via email and we will make that update for you. This is especially important because the NIMAC also manages a public-facing NIMAC State Coordinator Directory, and I'll show you that here. This is on our informational site. You'll go to the page that says NIMAC State Coordinators. And this is where folks will go when they need to figure out who their primary contact is in their state for the NIMAC. So you can just click the link here. It'll take you down to the record, and uh, they'll have access to your email address and phone number here. So it's very important that we know what your current information is, which is why you cannot update it yourself in your account. When we make those updates in the account, we also make them in the public facing directory as well. I also wanted to go ahead and quickly and show you the reports that you have access to in the system. You have two reports that you have access to. The first is all authorized users download report. This is one that you can choose a few different criteria for total downloads or unique by account or title, and then you can set date parameters. And then you can export that report to a CSV file and quickly look at it in Excel. And then your other report option is your AMP assignments for authorized users. What's important with your reports is that although you may be serving as the state coordinator for your state temporarily, your state coordinator account is actually has existed since your state first coordinated with the NIMAC. So as the current state coordinator, you can actually see the AMP assignments for all of the individuals who have served as authorized users under your account. You can kind of go back and see all of the various folks who have had accounts in the past. And again, you can sort this by accessible media producer that they assigned to, or format type or date, and export that to a CSV file. Next, I'm going to quickly show you how to search the NIMAC. Depending on your role as state coordinator, you may occasionally get really specific questions about folks who are actually looking for accessible formats or need assistance with having a NIMAS file assigned to them, or just checking to see if a NIMAS file exists for the material that they need. Searching the NIMAC is really easy, and the best search, the search that we recommend doing whenever possible, is the ISBN search, searching with the unhyphenated 13-digit ISBN on the print book. And you'll see here, this is what your search results will look like in the NIMAC inventory page. So you can quickly see some of the metadata elements here, including the copyright year and the state edition information. And if you want more information, you can click View Details to see additional metadata information about that record. If you're the person who reached out to you, say they're interested instead in a program, they don't know the specific ISBN of the material that they need, you can search by program instead. You just use a quoted phrase search for the series that you're looking for. And in this case, I searched STEMscope's K-12 Science, and then you'll see there are 145 results here. And then you can narrow those down using the filters on the top, on the side of the screen. So say maybe you know that you need the Texas State Edition, maybe you know the grade level that you need, maybe it's fifth grade. You narrow it down. And one of the most handy things that we use all of the time in the NIMAC is the ability to export your search results. So say you're assisting a user in your state and you're trying to help them identify the specific files that they need to send to their authorized user or what have you. You can hit this export button on the top of your search results once you've narrowed those down, and that will export to a CSV file that you can then share with them, and it has all the relevant metadata that they might need. The other thing I wanted to show you quickly, in case you are assisting someone, either yourself or you're just providing, reference information to someone, is the LUI database. So the LUI database is maintained by the American Printing House for the Blind, and it is a listing of accessible formats that have already been produced. So in LUI, you can find records for Braille and large print and audio and accessible digital formats. Searching Louis also provides search results for Bookshare. The Bookshare inventory is part of the Louis search, as well as the NIMAC. So you can actually go here and quickly search again by ISBN, ideally, and see if the material that you need is already available, either in the format that you need. So in this case, I searched by an ISBN for an algebra title. You can see here this top result is the NIMAC record. So we know that there's a NIMAS file for it. That already exists. But as you scroll down, you'll see there's a Braille version, and you can see the even more detail here on the accessible format. UEB with Nemeth, contracted. You'll see PH has produced this material in Braille as well. And you'll see an e-file and a tactile record in addition. You can expand the record here and see some additional information. This view also gives you the full contact information that you might need, either yourself or the person that you're assisting to reach out to that agency for more information about how to order that material. I just want to quickly show you Louis while we were here. I'm going to pause now and see if anyone has any questions about working in the NIMAC system, or even Louis, happy to answer any questions or demonstrate anything else about utilizing Louis as well.
Okay, well, I am not seeing anything in the chat.
Great. Okay, well, we'll pause just a little longer just in case. But we're so glad that you all joined us this afternoon. We do have that training if you do want to learn more about how your authorized users work with the NIMAC, or you're interested in becoming a hybrid state coordinator. We do have that training coming up. Please do reach out and we'll send you the registration information for that. And Alexa's also going to pop that exit survey link in the chat again. Um, Please do take just a moment to complete that so that we get some feedback and can continue to offer training that is relevant and useful for you. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Really appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Have a good evening.